Have you ever wondered what your family would do if you suddenly disappeared? Like, actually vanished from their daily life? Would they look for you? Panic. Call everyone they know? Because I found out the hard way. My name is Maya Reynolds, I'm 29, and I work as an ER nurse in Denver. And this wild, unbelievable, heartbreaking then vengeful mess, all happened on Christmas Eve. But before I dive into the real stuff, hold on, what are you doing right now while hearing my voice? Are you cooking, driving, wrapping gifts? I love reading your answers in the comments, so seriously, drop it below. Alright, let's rewind. The first thing I remember is the sound. A high, annoying beeping that drilled into my skull like someone was playing whack-a-mole inside my brain. Then came the smell, sharp disinfectant, cold metal, and that sterile hospital air I'd know anywhere. Except this time, I wasn't the nurse. I was the patient. I tried to swallow, but my throat felt like I'd gargled barbed wire. That's when I realized there was tape on my neck. A tube had been there. Which means I'd been unconscious, intubated, and very, very close to dying. My eyes finally opened enough to see the clock on the wall. 5:12 a.m. December 24th. Christmas Eve. I couldn't remember the last 3 days. Only collapsing in my apartment after a 16-hour shift, fever burning through me like wildfire. I reached for my phone on the side table with hands that felt like someone else's. After 3 pathetic attempts, the screen lit up. And that's when the bottom dropped out of my chest. 18 missed fraud alerts. All from my bank. All for charges I didn't make. One stood out. $15,087. Aspen Ridge Luxury Resort. Posted yesterday. Aspen. My family's dream place to live like celebrities for a weekend. We've never had the money for it. I especially didn't. I've been saving for years. My own place, maybe a wedding someday, maybe a dog, okay, definitely a dog. That savings account was my future. And it was gone. My brain was still foggy, still desperately trying to piece together what the hell happened. But things got worse. Because I opened Instagram. And there, smiling in crisp mountain sunlight, wearing matching red plaid Christmas outfits, stood the 3 people who were supposed to care if I lived or died. My mom, my brother Chase, and his girlfriend Bree. In Aspen. On my dime. They were standing in front of a massive Christmas tree, hot cocoa in hand, giant gingerbread house behind them. And the caption? Best Christmas ever. Treating ourselves, because we deserve it. Christmas tree red heart, #family time. I stared at that photo so long my vision warped. Not a single call. Not a text. Not even a, hey you alive? But plenty of time to raid my savings and run off to Aspen like a trio of festive thieves. I barely had time to process it before the next horror dropped. A voicemail. From my mom. Cheerful. Breathless. Not a care in the world. Hey honey. Just letting you know we made it safely. Aspen is gorgeous. You wouldn't believe it. Anyway, Merry Christmas Eve. We'll talk later. Talk later. Later. Like I wasn't lying in an ICU bed fighting sepsis while they roasted marshmallows in the mountains. My chest tightened until I thought the monitor beside me was going to start screaming. And then, like some twisted plot twist, my door swung open. Not a nurse. Not a doctor. But Aunt Jo, my mom's older sister, the one my family hates because she calls out nonsense when she sees it. Her eyes locked on mine. You're awake, she said, dropping a thick folder onto the rolling table. Good. We need to talk. Aunt Jo wasn't smiling. She wasn't relieved. She looked furious. And she knew something. Something big. Something that made her say the next words in a tone that chilled me deeper than my fever ever could. Maya, your family didn't just take a vacation. They robbed you. And I can prove it. My heart stopped. And that's when the real story began. I blinked at Aunt Jo, still half convinced I was dreaming, or hallucinating from whatever Olympic-level infection had almost killed me. What do you mean robbed me? I croaked. My voice sounded like burnt sandpaper wrapped in regret. Aunt Jo dragged a chair to the bedside, sat down, and opened the thick folder she brought like she was about to deliver a TED Talk titled Your Family Sucks, a comprehensive breakdown. She pulled out the first paper. Your mom, your brother, and Bree didn't just use your debit card, she said. They used everything you gave them access to. And they didn't stop at Aspen. My head was still swimming, but that word hit like a slap. Everything. Aunt Jo nodded grimly. You know those temporary loans they begged for last month? The ones they promised to pay back after Christmas. Oh God. My stomach twisted. I remembered Chase's text. Sis, can I borrow $300? It's for Mom's Christmas gift. Don't be petty. Then Bree's message. Hi, sweetie. Could you spot me $150 for a hair appointment? I want to look good for family pics. And my mom calling, voice trembling, claiming she needed urgent help to fix her car. I paid that bill. $900. Now Aunt Jo was shaking her head. They lied, she said. Your mom's car didn't need repairs. Chase didn't buy her a gift. Bree wasn't some struggling girlfriend trying to look cute. She flipped another page toward me. Receipts, transfers, withdrawals, all from my accounts. My chest tightened painfully, the same chest that had nearly stopped beating 2 days earlier. Aunt Jo watched me closely. You almost died, Maya, she said quietly. And your mom's biggest concern was whether the resort had enough peppermint mochas. That broke me more than the medical charts ever could. My voice cracked. How did you even know I was here? Aunt Jo's expression softened. You listed me as your primary emergency contact last year, remember? That Thanksgiving when your mom forgot to pick you up from the airport. Oh, right. That Thanksgiving. The one where I waited for 3 hours while my family posted pictures of pie like I didn't exist. I'd listed Aunt Jo out of pure spite. Guess spite saved my life. Aunt Jo continued. The hospital called. Told me you were in critical condition. I drove straight here. And while you were hooked up to machines, guess where your family was? I swallowed. Aspen. She let out a humorless laugh. No, sweetheart, not just Aspen. Look at this. She turned her phone toward me. A video loaded. My brother Chase's TikTok. He was in a massive cabin, a Christmas tree behind him so big it could have had its own zip code. He was dancing with Bree to some trendy Christmas remix. Caption: Christmas Eve vibes. When sis finally pays up Christmas tree face with tears of joy #blessed #Aspen life. My blood went cold. He posted that? I whispered. He deleted it 5 minutes later. But not before I screenshotted everything. I couldn't breathe for a second. They knew I was in the hospital, right? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Aunt Jo's jaw tightened. Oh, they knew. I told them myself. She leaned forward. And do you want to know what your mom said when I told her you were intubated? I braced myself. She said, and I quote, Ugh, why does Maya always act dramatic around the holidays? I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. Dramatic. Intubated. Septic. Nearly dead. But dramatic. Aunt Jo wasn't finished. And when I told them to come back immediately, Chase said, the lift tickets are non-refundable. Non-refundable. Like my life was a minor inconvenience to their ski weekend. I pressed a shaky hand to my forehead, staring at the ceiling tiles. How could they do this? I whispered. How could my own family? They've been doing it for years, Aunt Jo cut in gently. You've just never been this close to seeing the truth. I closed my eyes, tears slipping out before I could stop them. Then Aunt Jo placed something else on the bed. My bank statement, with a fresh transaction from just 2 hours earlier. A new charge. $1,478, Aspen Ridge Spa, Holiday Renewal Couples Package. My jaw dropped. Are you kidding me? Aunt Jo shook her head, almost pitying. It gets worse. She flipped the page. At the bottom, circled in red, pending charge, $6,800. Aspen Ridge, Snowfall Chalet Upgrade. I stared at it like it was radioactive. They're upgrading their chalet, I whispered. Yep. Using my money. Yep. While I'm here. In the ICU. Yep. I pressed my hands to my face, overwhelmed by the betrayal, the audacity, the pure, unfiltered evil of it all. And then Aunt Jo said something that made my heart stop completely. They've been making plans for after Christmas too. What plans? She inhaled slowly. Maya! They're trying to get access to your savings account. The one you never told them about. My head snapped up. How? She looked at me, eyes dark and serious. That's what I'm here to show you. My pulse spiked. My monitor beeped faster. Because if they found that account, my entire future was on the line. And Aunt Jo's next words chilled me straight through the hospital gown. They're planning something big. And if we don't move fast, they're going to take everything. Aunt Jo slid the last page of my bank statement back into the folder like she was packaging evidence for a court case. From the look on her face, she basically was. I tried pushing myself up on the pillows, but the 4-line tugged and my body reminded me I was still running on like 12% battery. Jo, I said, voice trembling, how could they even know about my savings account? I've never used it around them. I don't even keep the card with me. She opened her bag again. God bless this woman. She was like Mary Poppins if Mary Poppins fought white-collar crimes on weekends, and pulled out a small, black USB drive. This, she said, was mailed to me 2 days ago. My eyes widened. Mailed? By who? Anonymously. Okay, that was alarming. She plugged the USB into her tablet and opened a video file. A grainy clip popped up. My apartment hallway. Specifically, the hallway outside my bedroom. What the hell? I whispered. Aunt Jo zoomed in. At first the figure was blurry, but then the frame sharpened. My stomach dropped straight into the hospital mattress. It was Chase, my brother. Inside my home. I felt my breath catch. What, why, when was this? 3 weeks ago, Jo said. You were on a double shift. He let himself in with the spare key you thought you lost. I remembered tearing apart every drawer looking for that stupid key. I assumed I misplaced it. Turns out, my brother was running covert missions like he was starring in the dollar store version of Mission Impossible. We kept watching. Chase went straight to my dresser, opened the bottom drawer, pulled out my old tax folders. I instantly felt sick. He wasn't snooping. He was searching. Aunt Jo paused the video. Your tax forms list all your active accounts, she said. Even the ones you never told anyone about. I covered my mouth. He had seen everything. My emergency fund. My home savings. The account with money my grandma, not that grandma, the nice one, left me when she passed. The account I had never touched. He took photos, I whispered, staring as Chase snapped picture after picture. Of all of it. Every page. Aunt Jo nodded grimly. and he sent them to your mom. At that moment, I swear something inside me cracked. Not a physical thing, not my infection, just something I thought was unbreakable. My last sliver of faith in them. I pressed my hands against my face, shaking. My own family looked me in the eyes and told me they didn't even know I had savings. Aunt Jo let out a hollow laugh. Oh, they knew. They just knew you wouldn't protect it from them. The worst part, she wasn't wrong. She clicked the next file. It was a screenshot of my mother's text messages. Not from my phone. From Chase's. He had screen recorded their conversation. And whoever anonymously mailed Joe the USB saved that too. Mom's bubble popped up first. Get everything. If Maya's serious about moving next year, we need that money before she transfers it. Chase replied. Sis won't say no. She never does. We're taking the Aspen trip now to remind her what family sacrifice looks like. My stomach twisted. Mom responded instantly. Good. Once we're back, we'll guilt her into adding me as a signer. She'll think it's temporary. She's emotionally vulnerable during the holidays. I felt the blood drain from my face. Emotionally vulnerable. Like I was a weak animal. A resource. A wallet that happened to breathe. Aunt Jo put a gentle hand on my arm. I'm so sorry you had to see that. But you needed to. I wiped my eyes with a rough hospital tissue. Why would someone send all this to you instead of me? Maybe they knew you were sick, she said. Maybe they knew you'd be alone. Maybe they wanted you to have backup. She took a deep breath. There's one more file. If I had the strength, I would have said nope, I'm tapping out. But I nodded. She opened it. It was another video. Recorded last night. In what looked like the Aspen chalet. My mom, Chase, and Bree sat around a crackling fireplace. Hot cocoa. Cozy blankets. Everything festive and warm. Mom said, once this upgrade clears, we'll have to move fast. Maya isn't stable. Once she's out of the hospital, she'll cling to us again. Chase nodded like the world's most useless bobblehead. We can convince her to put us on her emergency savings. She's basically a walking guilt trip. She'll never say no. And then Bree giggled. She's probably just milking the hospital thing anyway. Maya loves the victim attention. That one hurt. More than the sepsis. More than the financial betrayal. More than anything. My chest tightened until the heart monitor started beeping faster. A nurse rushed in, alarmed. I held up a hand. I'm okay, I whispered. But I wasn't. Aunt Jo stood beside me, eyes blazing. They've crossed every line imaginable, she said. And now we're going to burn their little plan to the ground. I looked at her. She looked at me. And something shifted. I wasn't helpless anymore. I wasn't the doormat, the ATM, the dependable daughter. I was a person who'd nearly died while my family used my money to toast marshmallows in the Rockies. Oh, I was going to fight back. But Jo wasn't done. There's one more thing you need to know, she said quietly. And it changes everything. My heart stuttered. She hesitated. The Aspen charges, she said slowly, aren't the worst part. I frowned. What could be worse? Aunt Jo took a deep breath, eyes full of something like fury wrapped in heartbreak. Maya, they didn't just drain your accounts. They opened a loan in your name. I froze. What kind of loan? She looked me dead in the eyes. A $42,000 personal loan. Approved yesterday. Signed electronically. I felt the world tilt. What signature? I didn't sign anything. Jo stared back at me. I know. Because, sweetheart, they forged your name. The room spun. My heart monitor screamed. And everything in me knew. This wasn't a family problem anymore. This was a war. I felt like the floor of the ICU shifted underneath my bed. A forged $42,000 loan? In my name? While I was unconscious. My pulse spiked hard enough that the heart monitor started screaming like a fire alarm. The nurse poked her head back in, saw my face, and backed right out again like, yeah, this is above my pay grade. I stared at Aunt Jo, voice barely a whisper. They committed financial identity theft. She nodded once. Stone cold. Controlled. Like she'd been preparing for this moment for years. I checked the lender records, she said, pulling out another document. The loan was approved last night. Disbursed immediately. Into an account under your name. Under my name, I repeated numbly, but not my account. Not even close, she said. They set up a fake online banking profile using your social, your DOB, everything. And they added your mother's phone number as the two-factor contact. I swallowed hard. It hurt. Everything hurt. My social. Chase had my tax forms. My birth date. My mom gave that to everyone. My passwords. I felt sick. They know all my security questions. Every one. Aunt Jo nodded. Favorite childhood toy? Your mom sold it at a yard sale. First pet? You had a fish named Sparkle. High school mascot? Bears. Anyone who knows you could guess your whole digital life. A wave of nausea rolled through me. I wasn't violated. I was gutted. And the worst part, Jo continued, pulling up a screenshot, is how they justified the loan. I took the tablet with a shaking hand. The reason listed on the lender's form read, medical emergency, assistance needed for sick family member. My breath hitched. They used me. I whispered. They used your hospitalization to get the loan, Jo said coldly. Filed the request at 2:14 a.m., right after your mother posted that stupid marshmallow roasting boomerang from Aspen. It felt like someone stabbed a hot knife between my ribs. I took a few shaky breaths, because apparently my body was ready to pass out again. Where's the money now? Jo flipped to another document. Transferred immediately. To Chase. Of course. And he already withdrew $8,000 in cash at some ski lodge ATM. I pressed my shaking hands into the blanket. I'm going to vomit. Aunt Jo put a steady hand on my wrist. You're not alone, Maya. And this isn't the end. She opened another file. This is where your family messed up. She zoomed in on the document. The signature they used? It's not just forged, it's sloppy. Whoever signed that loan contract didn't even try to match your actual signature. They copied your old signature. The one you stopped using 6 years ago. My eyebrows shot up. How do you know that? Because I helped you change it, she said with a shrug. Remember? After you left that toxic relationship and we sat at my dining table practicing new signatures with Sharpies while eating leftover cheesecake. I blinked at her, half shocked, half teary. Nobody remembers little stuff like that. Nobody except Jo. She continued, we have irrefutable proof your signature was forged. And we have the USB video of Chase snooping through your documents. And the text messages where your mom, God help me, literally planned the whole thing. My brain was spinning, but one thought kept repeating. They weren't stealing from me because they were desperate. They were stealing from me because they thought I wouldn't fight back. Aunt Jo sat up straighter, her voice steel-sharp. They made a mistake, Maya. A huge one. They assumed you'd stay quiet. They assumed you'd keep being the emotional punching bag. They assumed you wouldn't do anything because it's Christmas. She leaned in. But guess what? We're going to make sure Christmas is the day everything changes. I let out a shaky breath. I don't even know where to start. Oh, I do, Joe said. And you're going to love this part. She pulled out a final document. The header read, Power of Attorney, Temporary Assignment. I stared at her. What's this? Joe smiled, a dangerous, feral, Aunt Joe smile. You're sick. You're vulnerable. You can't walk for more than 2 minutes without fainting, and your family is actively committing felonies in your name. So we're going to hit them with the one thing they never expected, a full-blown fraud investigation. My heart thudded. Wait, like legal, police, federal, all of the above, Joe said. Multiple crimes, multiple jurisdictions, multiple charges. I blinked. Joe, this is going to blow up our entire family. No, sweetheart, she said softly. They blew up the family. We're just picking up the pieces. I stared at her. At Christmas, she said simply. Before they get home and before they spend another dollar of your money. Then she leaned closer. Tomorrow morning, when Aspen Ridge runs that final $6,800 chalet upgrade charge, we're going to block the card at the exact moment the manager swipes it. And then what? Joe's smile sharpened. Then we're going to call the hotel. Explain the fraud. Freeze the booking. Cancel their reservations. And let the Aspen police escort your sweet, loving family right out of their luxury resort. I stared at her, jaw on the floor. They'll be humiliated. Oh, they'll be stranded, Joe corrected. Christmas Eve. No rooms. No credit. No money. No ride. She paused. And that's only phase 1. My pulse quickened. Phase 2. I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Aunt Joe glanced at the door, then back at me, eyes sparking with something electric. Phase 2, she whispered, is where we go after the loan. And that's when things get real. Morning hit like a slap. Not because of sunlight. ICU rooms never see the sun. But because Aunt Joe woke me up at 6:12 a.m. holding a cup of hospital coffee that tasted like regret and printer ink. It's time, she said. Time for what? Time for revenge. Time for consequences. Time for me to stop being the family doormat and start being the woman who almost died while her family upgraded to a chalet suite with a steaming hot tub and mountain views. I sat up slowly, still weak, but fueled by pure betrayal and caffeine that tasted like it had been brewed under duress. Chalet upgrade charge hits the card at 7 a.m., Joe said, checking her watch. We have 48 minutes. Okay, I said. Walk me through it again. She grinned. I love that you're ready to go to war before breakfast. Truthfully, I was ready before she even said the word forged. 6:20 a.m. Operation. Cut the parasites. Joe opened my banking app. Ready. I nodded. She tapped account settings, manage cards, lock card. A bright red banner flashed. This card is now frozen. No new charges will be approved. My breath caught. That's it, Joe said. It's done. Done. I echoed. Yes, she said. Which means, when they check out this morning, they're going to get denied. Spectacularly denied. I pictured my mom stepping up to the Aspen Ridge front desk, all smiles, hair perfectly curled, wearing a ridiculous Christmas cardigan, right before the hotel staff said, "Ma'am, your payment declined." The image fed my soul. 6:44 a.m. The Aspen call. Now, Joe said, we call the hotel and report the charges as fraudulent. I hesitated. It felt big. Final. That means they'll cancel their room? Yep. And the upgrade? Gone. And the spa packages? Gone. And the Christmas dinner reservations they bragged about online? Gone. I pressed my hand to my chest. Joe, that's evil. She raised a brow. That's justice. She dialed. When the hotel manager answered, Joe flipped a switch, professional, calm, terrifyingly composed. Like she took a master class in corporate destruction. Hello, this is regarding room 418. We need to report unauthorized charges, including a chalet upgrade processed under fraudulent circumstances. The cardholder is hospitalized and unable to make those transactions. The manager went silent for a long second. Then, oh my God, absolutely, ma'am. We'll cancel everything immediately. Joe ended the call. That's phase 1, she said. Now we wait for the explosion. 7:07 a.m. Detonation. The explosion came via chase. My phone buzzed with 10 rapid-fire messages, each one angrier than the last. WTF, why is the card declined? Are you serious right now? Moem is crying. They're saying we owe them $6,800. Call me now, Maya, WTF. Then he tried calling. Over and over. Like I was customer service for the consequences of his own stupidity. A nurse walked in just in time for my phone to buzz again. She glanced at the screen. Saw, Chase, do not answer. She gently unplugged my phone charger, handed it to me, and whispered, You don't have to pick it up. Healing includes boundaries. God bless that woman. I pressed silence. Joe clapped once. Beautiful. Now. She opened her laptop. Phase 2. I swallowed. The fraudulent loan? She nodded. This is where things get messy. But messy for them, not for you. She showed me a form. The title read, Federal Identity Theft and Fraud Report, Form 14039B. My stomach flipped. Is this IRS level? Oh yeah, Joe said cheerfully. We're skipping the small stuff. She opened the second form. FTC Identity Theft Affidavit. Complaint number pending. And this, she said, goes to the Federal Trade Commission. Then she pulled out a third document. Criminal complaint. Financial fraud. State Attorney General's Office. I blinked. I'm filing all of these today, Joe said. You'll sign them. And by the end of the week, the lender will freeze the loan, block the funds, and start an investigation. What happens to my family? Joe shrugged. That depends. On what? On how stupid they are when the investigators contact them. We both knew the answer. They were exactly stupid enough. Joe leaned forward. But there's something else. Something big. My heart rate ticked up. What now? I whispered. Joe slid a final page to me. A screenshot. A transfer receipt. And not the loan. Something older. Something worse. 3 months ago. A $9,800 withdrawal. From my emergency fund. To an unknown account. I stared at it, feeling faint. I didn't do this, I said. I know, Joe said. But guess who did? I looked at the transaction description. There was a reference name attached. Brianna Hastings. Bree. My brother's girlfriend. They hadn't just robbed me recently. They'd been stealing for months. My voice cracked. Why would she take almost 10 grand? What was it even for? Joe hesitated. She bit her lip. Maya, I didn't want to tell you this yet. Tell me what? She lowered her voice, like the walls might be listening. They weren't just using your money for Aspen. I froze. They were using it for something else. What? I whispered. Her eyes met mine. Maya! Bree took that $9,800 to hire a lawyer. My breath caught. A lawyer? For what? Joe exhaled slowly. To help Chase and your mom file paperwork to claim conservatorship over your finances. I felt like my soul left my body. What? I croaked. They were planning to take legal control of your money, Joe said softly. Permanently. My vision blurred. My hands shook. My heart monitor spiked again. And if you hadn't collapsed, she finished, they were going to file it this week. A cold tremor ran through me. So yes, sweetheart, she whispered. They weren't just stealing from you. They were trying to own you. If the ICU room felt cold before, it turned glacial now. Conservatorship. Over me. A living, breathing adult with a job, a career, a savings plan, and bills in my own damn name. It felt surreal, like I was in one of those Lifetime movies where the villain is just cartoonishly evil. Except this wasn't TV. This was my family. Aunt Jo watched me with that careful look, the one doctors give right before telling you your lab results are bad. You okay? She asked. No, I whispered. Absolutely not. They wanted to control everything. Everything I've ever earned. Everything I've ever saved. She nodded slowly. And now you know why they kept guilt-tripping you every chance they got. Why they pushed the family loyalty narrative so hard. Why every Christmas they made you pay for everything. They were conditioning you, Maya. I grabbed the edges of the blanket. They were trying to break me, I said quietly. Joe's voice softened. They thought you were the weak link. I shook my head. No, I was the supply. She exhaled. There it is. We sat in heavy silence for a moment. The kind that's so thick it feels like someone draped a weighted blanket over your soul. Finally I asked, what do we do now? Aunt Jo's eyes lit up, and it was the first thing that actually warmed me in hours. Now we end it, she said. For good. By 10:30 a.m., the first investigator calls. I was picking at hospital eggs, which are basically yellow rubber impersonating food, when my phone buzzed from a blocked number. Aunt Jo cocked an eyebrow. That might be exactly who I think it is. I answered. Is this Miss Maya Reynolds? Yes. This is Special Agent Carter with the State Financial Crimes Unit. We received a fraud and identity theft report regarding a loan issued in your name. Do you have a moment to confirm details? My hands shook so hard I had to steady them on the bed rail. Yes, I whispered. I do. The agent continued, voice crisp and businesslike. We've reviewed the lender documents, including the signature on the loan. We've also received copies of security footage that appears to show another individual accessing your tax records. We're opening a formal investigation. I shot a look at Aunt Jo. She nodded like, yep. Right on schedule. Agent Carter asked, do you know the individuals who may be responsible? I swallowed. Unfortunately, yes. What are their names? I exhaled shakily. My mother. My brother. His girlfriend. There was a pause. Not judgmental, professional. But I felt the weight of it. Then Agent Carter said, we will need statements from you and any witnesses. We're also freezing all loan-related activity during the investigation. You are not liable for the funds. I closed my eyes. Not liable. I didn't even realize how heavy that fear had been until it lifted slightly. After the call ended, I slumped back into the pillows. That's it. I asked. It's happening? Joe smirked. Oh, sweetheart, that's the first domino. Just watch. 11:04 a.m. Aspen Ridge calls. The front desk manager left a voicemail. Hello, Miss Reynolds. We need to inform you that the guests currently occupying your reserved suite have been removed from the chalet due to fraudulent payment. Local authorities have escorted them to the lobby. They are demanding to speak with you. I almost laughed. Almost. But the sound that came out of me was something more feral. A sound I didn't know I was capable of. Joe grinned. I told you phase 1 would be satisfying. I pressed a hand over my mouth to keep from wheezing. They must be losing their minds, I said, voice shaking with something dangerously close to joy. Oh, they are, Joe said. And that's nothing compared to what's coming. 1:30 p.m. Another call. This time from a number I did recognize. My mother. Joe leaned back, folded her arms, and said, You don't have to answer. I stared at the screen. I wanted to ignore it. Block her. Pretend she didn't exist. But something inside me wanted closure. I hit accept and put it on speaker. My mom's voice blasted through the phone at hurricane volume. How dare you embarrass us on Christmas Eve? Oh, there it was. Not concern. Not worry. Pure, unfiltered entitlement. You left us stranded, she shrieked. We had to sit in the lobby in our pajamas. People were staring at us. The cops, talked to us. Good, I said. She gasped like I slapped her with a stocking full of coal. Good. Maya, look what you're doing to this family. No, I said calmly. Look what you did to me. Maya Marie Reynolds, you ungrateful. I hung up. Silence filled the room. Joe exhaled slowly, pride glowing in her voice. That, she said, was a boundary. I felt lighter, clearer, dangerous. Like I had finally stepped onto the side of myself that wasn't terrified of disappointing people. Especially people who'd been perfectly fine watching me die alone. 2:15 p.m. Agent Carter calls again. And this time, his voice carried a different tone. Sharper. More urgent. Miss Reynolds, he said, we've uncovered something else during our preliminary review. I tensed. Something else. I repeated. Yes, he said. There is a significant issue involving your family that goes beyond identity theft. Joe and I exchanged a glance. My chest tightened. What issue? He cleared his throat. We've discovered evidence your family attempted to access your retirement account, your insurance plan, and... My heart stopped. And what? I whispered. He hesitated. And your medical directives. My blood ran cold. Medical directives. The paperwork that gives someone control when you can't communicate. He continued, voice grim. It appears they attempted to have you declared mentally unfit to manage your finances. My mouth went dry. And they asked about transferring your medical decision-making to your mother. My heart monitor beeped in a rising rhythm. Panic building. They tried to. I couldn't even say it. Yes, he said quietly. It appears your family was preparing to take full control of your life. The room spun. Maya, he added, I need you to listen carefully. Because what we found next escalates this into an entirely different level of crime. Joe grabbed my hand, eyes wide. What did you find? I whispered. Agent Carter took a breath. And said something that made every hair on my body stand up. We uncovered communications suggesting that your family intended to sell your house and initiate the paperwork before you even woke up. I gasped. They thought you would be incapacitated long-term, he said. They were preparing to liquidate everything you own. The world went silent. Gone. They would have taken it all. My money, my identity, my home, my autonomy, everything. Agent Carter's next words were the nail in the coffin. Maya, if you hadn't woken up yesterday, they would have succeeded. I didn't realize I was shaking until Aunt Jo reached over and steadied my hand. Agent Carter's voice was still in my ear, calm but sharp as a scalpel. Maya, if you hadn't woken up when you did, your family would have taken possession of your finances, your medical decisions, and your property. They were moving fast. Very fast. I pressed a fist to my mouth. Not just betrayal. Not just theft. A full takeover. Like they were trying to erase me while I was still breathing. Aunt Jo's voice cut through the fog. Agent Carter, what happens now? There was a rustle of papers on his end. Then, now? We file formal charges. I blinked. Charges, plural? Yes, he said. Identity theft, financial fraud, attempted conservatorship under false pretenses, medical directive interference, and mortgage-related exploitation. Multiple felonies. It felt unreal. Like this wasn't my life. Like I was watching someone else's horror story play out on a screen. He continued, an investigator is being sent to take your in-person statement within the hour. Please remain available. Okay, I whispered. When I hung up, the room stayed quiet for several seconds. Heaviness. Shock. Relief. All tangled up like Christmas lights thrown in a closet. Then Aunt Jo exhaled slowly. Maya, sweetheart. Her voice trembled for the first time. You survived just in time. That cracked me open. I didn't cry earlier. Not during the Aspen betrayal. Not during the forged loan. Not during the conservatorship reveal. But now. The tears came like a damn flood. Aunt Jo pulled me into the gentlest hug, careful not to bump my fore. Cry. Let it out. You held yourself together for too long. I buried my face in her shoulder and sobbed like a kid. Because I almost died. And my family almost stole the rest of my life in the process. 1 week later, post-ICU, I was discharged into Aunt Jo's care. She took me to her house. Warm lights, cozy blankets, cinnamon-scented candles, everything a home should feel like. Not bare. Not cold. Not transactional. But safe. The investigators met us there. 3 of them. They viewed the USB footage, the forged signatures, the loan documents, the Aspen charges, the text messages, the attempted conservatorship forms filed behind my back. Each piece made my stomach twist, but the investigators took notes. Lots of them. One even muttered, "Holy hell, this is one of the worst family fraud cases I've seen in years." They left with folders so thick they barely closed. 2 weeks later, the arrests. I wasn't there in person, but Aunt Jo showed me the email from Agent Carter. All 3 individuals have been detained for questioning. Mom, Chase, Bree. Turns out they didn't stay quiet. They blamed each other, cried, lied, changed stories every 5 minutes. Classic guilty people behavior. But the text messages, the screenshots, the forged signatures, and the USB footage didn't lie. Within days, Chase was charged with identity theft and bank fraud. Bree was charged with aiding fraud and unauthorized access to financial documents. My mother was charged with attempted conservatorship manipulation and medical decision interference. It wasn't petty revenge. It wasn't satisfaction. It was justice. Justice for the girl lying in an ICU bed on Christmas Eve with tubes down her throat while her family sipped hot cocoa in a 5-star chalet using her money. Justice for the years I let myself be used, drained, manipulated. Justice for the woman who finally chose herself. 2 months later, My new life. I moved into a small apartment overlooking the Denver skyline. Not fancy, but mine. My space. My air. My future. I started therapy. I cut off toxic family ties. I reclaimed control of my finances. And I changed every password known to mankind. Aunt Jo helped me apply for a victim compensation program, and the fraudulent loan? Completely reversed. Zero liability. Zero debt. I even adopted a rescue dog, a tiny mutt named Blizzard who refuses to leave my side. He snores like a chainsaw and I love him so much it hurts. And for the first time since I was a kid, Christmas doesn't scare me. As for my family, they reached out. Of course they did. Voicemails, emails, letters, guilt trips dipped in fake tears and holiday pity. But I blocked every number, because forgiveness isn't the same as access. And love, real love, it doesn't drain you, it protects you, like Aunt Jo did, like I learned to do, and like I hope anyone watching this learns, too. If my story hit home, if you've ever dealt with toxic family, financial abuse, or emotional manipulation, just know this. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. And you're not alone. And if you ever need a sign to choose yourself, this is it. Thank you for sticking with me through all 7 parts of this wild Christmas Eve nightmare. If you want more stories like this, real, raw, and full of silent revenge done right, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Silent Revenge Lab. It helps more than you know. And I'd love to see you in the next story.